A long time ago, on a comics page far, far away. Greetings and welcome to May the Panel Be With You, the Star Wars comic book show brought to you by the Punch Up Entertainment Network. I'm your humble host, Mike Argoni, and joining me, as always, it's the boosh to my snoova, it's John Campbell.
Are you trying to dig into the most obscure you can get on these things?
I only ever pull from what's on the page, John.
Yeah, and yes, those are names that are in this comic.
And if we can honor the names of Boosh and Snoova while we're here, we will.
They don't get talked about enough, folks.
I don't think so.
Representation matters, folks. You know, Boosh and Snoova. God, this has become a slog.
Look, we're at that point in any miniseries coverage in which the two of us go, wait, why did we want to do this to begin with?
We're like, oh, months ago when we were putting a schedule for the show together, and we're like, that'll be fun. Or things like this where it's like, you know what, we'll give ourselves a break from the main line. I'm like, give me back to the 80s Marvel comic. At least there's some sort of old-timey charm to it. This is just 90s multimedia conglomerate nonsense.
Look, the way I see these sorts of breaks that we take are twofold. One is to make it so that when we go back to the original Marvel run, there is a sense of relief and like, oh, there's a comfort in that level of we don't care about telling a good Star Wars storyness.
Right, yeah.
Two, we are working a little bit the anthropology angle on all this, right? Like Star Wars as a comic book franchise has so many weird tendrils that have gone into different directions, and we as a show are sort of, our prerogative is to unravel those. We're called May the Panel Be With You, and the panel has gone all over the place. And believe you me, if I could figure out a way for us to talk about the comic strip that appeared in newspapers, I would do it. But the way it's formatted right now, it's difficult to do.
We're working on that, though. That is something we've discussed for sure. Because I am curious about it. And that may be something we do at some point. But that's in R&D right now.
And the way we've spoken about Shadows of the Empire in the past, the two of us specifically, as millennial Star Wars fans who grew up and like our formative Star Wars memories were formed at a time in which there was no new Star Wars.
Correct.
And so Shadows of the Empire does represent this kind of core memory, if we're using an inside-out terminology.
Yes. I think memory is key, not nostalgia. Nostalgia for the era, but I have no nostalgia for this story specifically beyond some of the aesthetics of it, maybe.
I think nostalgia is a tricky monster to fight, right? Because
there's a book.
But my nostalgia for a thing is different than your nostalgia for a thing is different from anybody else's nostalgia for a thing. Nostalgia is a gestalt feeling that is comprised of where you were at in your life when you were introduced to a thing. It is memories that you have associated with the presence of a media thing, whether it be like with family or friends or close to a birthday or what have you. It's all wrapped up in this big gumbo of emotion that all you know is that some small piece of that is triggered when you reconsume that media.
Right. Yeah, and that's definitely the case here, right? This is something we were prime age to be aware of this, right? I mean, they were selling it with the toys, with the comics, with the video games.
And even if we didn't consume it all directly ourselves as it was being released, because God knows I didn't collect Shadows of the Empire issue to issue, but when it was released in trade, did I read it over and over again? Absolutely. Did I read the novel back to front over and over again? Absolutely. Did I listen to the soundtrack? Yes, because it was technically kind of included in the PC version of the video game.
Right. Yeah, that's the thing, is I have nostalgia for it as a property, not like this is a Star Wars story I love, because it's not a particularly great Star Wars story.
I think it is an interesting and formative Star Wars story for what we know as like the expanded universe, right? Because let's be honest, it's around this period that we have the Thrawn trilogy being written, and we have a lot of the like New Jedi Order stuff being put down, and what we consider to be the expanded universe now was just Star Wars at this time.
Yeah. Yes,
so
exactly.
Our memories of that are establishing what is Star Wars to us.
It was a lot easier. We talk about this a lot, that like, in the time we grew up in, Star Wars canon, and as a kid I didn't really think about this, but it was sort of whatever you made it, right? You would read a novel and go, oh, I guess that's where the story goes. There wasn't a lot to refute anything, because it never felt like, I don't remember as a kid there was sort of this loose concept of prequels might exist at some point, but it was never like, ooh, there's going to be a new Star Wars movie. It always felt like there was Star Wars and then all these things that were based on those three movies.
Well, and kids like me who were just pretty slavish to what was canon and could explain the different tiers of it to you even before the prequels came out. It was like, well, okay, there's alpha canon, which is like the movies. There's beta canon, which is like comics and novels. And then we get into like cartoons from the 70s that must be discussed. And
Right, exactly. I mean, that's the thing, is we did grow up in the era where most of the tie-in property was pretty good. That the 80s kids who had to suffer through things like the Ewok movies or the Droids cartoon, you're like, Jesus, anything that isn't the movies is terrible.
Well, and look, that's the history of Star Wars. I think it doesn't need to be said, but I think a lot of fans these days, and we're looking at the fandom menace critically so often on this show, but these outspoken people who think that Star Wars has somehow been degraded by what's been produced in recent years need to look back at the history of the franchise and realize, no, from day one, nobody took this as seriously as you think they did, because the second Star Wars thing ever to be produced was the holiday special.
Right, exactly, yeah, and that's sort of the thing where you're like, but we've talked about that, and we once again, I can't recommend A Disturbance in the Forest, the documentary about that holiday special, enough, because I think that really does a good job of not only discussing what that thing was, but why in its time period it's actually not as weird as it seems now. Not that it wasn't weird, but it was considerably less weird.
But speaking of things that are weird and or considerably less weird, let's talk about the issue we're talking about today.
I feel like every episode of this series has had the longest intros because there's so much weird context for this
Shadows of the Empire requires context, and we are here to deliver that context, because we are talking about issue number 4 of Star Wars Shadows of the Empire, released in August of 1996. We are now more than halfway through this series, and we're going to keep on trucking through the long haul here as we get basically the same creative team as we did last time.
We mean slowly uphill.
Well, you say that until we get to this issue, in which case we're going to be bouncing around really fast, really quickly.
Well, no, the pacing of the comic is all over the place, as we've mentioned. But yeah,
we got written by John Wagner, penciled by Killian Plunkett. We got inks by P. Craig Russell, colors by Carrie Porter, color separations by Heroic Age Colors, letters by Dave Cooper, with a Hugh Fleming cover that, honestly, I really like.
I do too. Once again, Hugh Fleming, no notes.
No notes. Let's what's going on, Hugh Fleming? We've got Boushh and Snuva. Wait, no, hold on.
Wait a minute. Come on.
Wait a minute. I think that person wearing a Boushh helmet is a Princess Leia in disguise.
It sure seems like, and that Wookiee seems awful familiar to me.
Yeah, I don't think his name is Snuva at all.
Oh boy, yeah. This is we're very familiar with this Leia costume from Return of the Jedi. Less so the Chewie.
Yeah, yeah. Chewie with a weird cyber eye patch and shoulder pads. God, he looks so 90s.
It is, yeah. This he could easily pop into a Cable comic, no problem.
Oh, this is a guy who fought with Cable, and what was Cable's like mercenary team called? Something
What?
Pack. Six Pack?
Yes.
That was the one he did with Domino in the comics?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Six. Yes. Oh God. Maybe the most '90s thing.
It's pretty up there.
Yeah.
But
I mean, the fact it's called Six Pack alone is. Yeah.
Did we need an origin story for the bounty hunter costume that Leia uses in Return of the Jedi?
No.
Well, too
No.
bad, John. Too bad.
Yeah. Did we need it? No. I mean, it could have been an interesting plot. It's not, but it could have been. Here's the thing about this, and a lot of this is adding you could argue this whole thing as a prequel to Return of the Jedi is so unnecessary because it's adding credence to things where I just thought Leia put on a helmet. Like I didn't know, I never really assumed there was like a whole story behind it.
Oh, you didn't know the intricate details about Boushh and the Ubi's bounty hunters and their proud lineage of hunters that go back so many generations.
It's Star Wars, so I could assume everything has an incredible, complicated, long backstory. But no, I didn't in the moment think that. Like I said, I just assumed she was like, "Oh, I'm going to put on that helmet." And actually, I think this helmet comes into the Marvel comic, doesn't it?
Well, because during the Bounty Hunter War crossover event that happened a little while ago, I believe there's a whole one-shot about Boushh, the actual person specifically.
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think when we were talking about this on the last episode, that the current Marvel comic taking place between Empire and Jedi is retconning a lot of this stuff. Mm-hmm. Or not even retconning, but just sort of erasing, because retconning implies that they gave a shit at all about this, or thought about it at all.
All of this was already erased, is what we got to understand.
Yeah, exactly. So
any of it that trickles back into the Disney era is purposeful, and it's them reintroducing stuff that had been previously just fully deleted, like the Thrawn stuff.
Right, exactly. And recontextualized, right? That's sort of the thing. Yeah, right. So, yeah. But I was going to say, I thought I remember there being something about this, but it's not as silly as this. And there's no cyber vision Chewie.
No. Actually, I really liked the Boushh one-shot. It actually had to do with the House of Tag, our beloved House of Tag.
Well, because yes, which we've talked about, is a thing that continues to rear its ugly head from time to time. I like the idea, because we've talked, and this is actually what I think Disney has done a great job with, of the expanded universe stuff in general. Kind of like Marvel with the comics. They've just sort of been going, I'm going to grab this and recontextualize that, because there are good ideas here. To act like none of that matters in the way that people, and I think there's less of this now, but of course, everybody got bent out of shape about the erasing of that stuff when Disney bought it. But I think they've done a pretty good job of taking what worked about that stuff and finding ways to make it work with the story they're telling.
Well, and I think we're going to see a lot more of that here in the near future, because as of this recording, none of these lines have started, but they've already announced that this era of the Star Wars comics is coming to an end, the between Empire and Jedi stuff, and we're going to be seeing after this, as the next relaunch is going to be post Return of the Jedi. So we're starting to get into that new Jedi Order sort of territory.
Which is what I'm excited for.
Yeah, it's a bold new frontier.
Yeah, that's the stuff I'm most curious about.
But let's get into something we're less curious about. It's Shadows of the Empire. And guess what? It's monologuing Boba Fett time.
It's right, I've got a lot to say.
So if you remember the end of last issue, we ended with Bosk and his fellow other bounty hunters sort of cornering Boba Fett on Slave One. That tricky 4-LOM managed to disable Boba Fett's ship, and now he is surrounded by bounty hunters.
Oh, man, it's bad news.
Also, the shape of Bosk's ship has changed between issues, but let's
Sure
not
has.
worry about that.
Sure has. Weird when it's the same art team and stuff, but nope. Anyway, we've got some bounty hunters we know and some ones we don't.
And look, the ones we don't are never going to get names. We should just assume they're going to die.
Turtle guy in a spacesuit and Bat Kid.
And there's a Mon Calamari there looking kind of angry.
Yeah, I don't know what his deal is.
He's upset about this whole situation. Clearly.
I'm really pissed.
But anyway, they've got Boba Fett at gunpoint.
Zuckuss is there. And Zuckuss is saying, the prize.
Because they're after, of course, frozen Han Solo.
Yes, we're all fighting over the frozen, the frozen body of the suspended animation Han Solo.
Which is the main plot of the War of the Bounty Hunters crossover event that Marvel did fairly recently.
It's not a bad idea, once again. You know, like, this is the thing. And so, so Boba Fett's basically just like, Boss can't destroy Slave One because you guys are on here too.
And Zuckuss is like, you think he cares about us?
That guy's famously awful.
And in fact, it is highlighted by Bosk's ship opening fire again on Slave One.
And fazanging that. Boss getting scalier and spikier than we're familiar with in this close-up panel.
It's just to show how mean he is, John.
Yeah, it's just like, I don't remember him being that intimidating. Starting to look like the Galaxy Quest villain.
I could go in and start explaining Trandoshan biology to you, John, but do we really want to be here all day?
I think you're bluffing, but that's all right. Yeah.
Am I, though?
That's the thing we never know about you, right? Is you do have such an encyclopedic knowledge of this stuff that I'm like, I think he's bullshitting, but he might really know that.
Don't call his bluff.
Yeah, I don't want to derail the show. It's not worth it. Yeah. And Zuckuss, Jesus. The one-liners never stop. All right, but what is Zuckuss? Does Zuckuss have a voice?
Zuckuss is what's called a Gand, and I don't
think I've ever heard Zuckuss talk.
No, because he's never talked in anything that
gave him a voice.
Requires a voice, yeah.
Comics or novels, yeah, but yeah. Anyway, I'm going to give.
I was desperately trying to recall if he showed up in any episode of the Clone Wars, and I do not believe so.
No, Bosk does. Yes, yeah, and Bosk once again has that sort of classic lizard man voice. Mm-hmm. So I'll give him sort of a. All right, Bosk. Don't shed any scales. I'm handling this. I sort of almost see him the Peter Lorre of the bounty hunters, right?
Sure. It would probably have some kind of weird filter on it because he is in some kind of containment environment.
I don't have my effects board in front of me, but yeah. But don't shed any scales. God, we're quipping. We're just nonstop quipping in this comic.
Look, if there's one thing we know about every Star Wars character ever is that they all quip all the time.
It's a famously quippy franchise. Is it? Han Solo kind of quips. That's about it, though.
But Zuckuss does point out, look, if Bosk blows this shit up, the only person that's going to survive is Han Solo because he's in carbonite.
Yeah. And Boba Fett's like, that makes sense. And Bosk will absolutely do that because, once again, famously the worst.
So he drops his weapon and Boba Fett gets put down in one of his holes.
Yeah. And I love... We talked about it doesn't matter who this guy is. The comic even says that because we've got the Bat Kid here who's taking him and he's like, I don't know you. What's your name? He goes, my name doesn't matter. And he's like, Boba Fett might as well be like, agreed.
I love the Bat Kid's line, though, here when he says, never mind my name. Don't try to sweet talk me, Fett. Because Boba Fett famous for his sweet talking.
Hey, hi, how you doing? It's a pretty sweet get-up you got there.
Did the fall hurt when you fell from heaven?
And we'll talk about a fall because when we turn the page here, what's this? Another trapdoor!
Yeah, last issue we had Boba Fett manage to get one over on old Forlom with a trapdoor, and he does it again.
And then in a very Looney Tunes fashion, he falls to the door, but his gun falls slower than him, or he throws it up in the air, so Boba Fett catches it. And then another one of Boba Fett's classic one-liners, going down.
I love that we do have the Looney Tunes logic here of the guy doesn't fall until he looks down.
Right. Whoop, woo! And then the gun goes up in the air, and he catches the gun. Whoop, whoop, whoop.
Yeah. Might as well call this guy Wile E. Coyote, the way he goes
Mine
out.
as well. And so Boba Fett, back in control, man.
Mm-hmm. So Boba Fett starts creeping around his own ship. Meanwhile, the other bounty hunters and Zuckuss are attempting to disconnect Boba Fett. Or no, they're attempting to disconnect Han Solo from Boba Fett's spaceship.
And it's not going well.
No, they do it on the next page. They go, he's free. They've got him.
Right. It has a lot of sparks involved.
But who's this creeping around in the vents above them? Why it's Boba Fett?
Boba Fett doing Die Hard on Slave One is kind of a cool idea. They don't really lean into it enough for my taste.
Why would a spaceship of Slave One size, which is a one-man patrol vehicle, have vents big enough for someone to crawl around in?
Probably do the Millennium Falcon like that.
I mean, there's famously spaces under the floor where you can creep around.
Yeah, absolutely. Or one of my favorite Next Generation episodes, of course, is Starship Mine.
Well, and the Enterprise is huge and has preschools on it.
Yeah. I mean, look at the the D does. Kirk's ship. There were no fucking kids on that thing. And so they're doing their work, stealing Han Solo.
So Bosk sends a shuttle to go get them, and they're about to load him up when what's this out of the rafters? It's Boba Fett.
Ah! Well, but Zuckuss is saying load him up. What's keeping Furl? Oh, I guess Furlag was the bat guy.
I'm not going to acknowledge that name.
Nope, sorry. He's already dead. It doesn't matter. And
so, yeah. The journey, I require Zuckuss alive. Why does he require Zuckuss alive?
I don't know. Because he's a known character as an action figure. He bezazzed the... that's the Mon Calamari that he bezazzed. And then
he bezazzed the Mon Calamari and the four-armed frog guy in the spacesuit.
Yeah. You two are another matter. And then immediately turns to the person he cares most about, frozen Han Solo, saying, I regret you will not be leaving so soon, so you're tough-talking a suspended animation Han Solo. What are you doing, you psychopath?
No, this comic book's Boba Fett is clearly an insane person, because he only has eyes and words for a frozen coffee table of a man.
It is so insane. God, it is goofy. And then,
but on the next page, we have Bosk being like, hey, Zuckuss, once Solo's safely aboard, we'll go get Mai Tais at the beach. I don't think he says that exactly.
No, but he should. He says, I've got a mind to blow up Fett's ship anyway. By the way, he's also become even scalier somehow.
Well, look, if you knew about Trandoshan biology, maybe you'd be less confused, John.
Of course, yeah. And so, anyway, I do like his thing about, Zuckuss, you know how Boba Fett sucks, right? And Zuckuss, because Boba Fett's got gunners, is like, I wouldn't say that. I think he's pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, so I guess Boba Fett's plan here is to have Zuckuss basically delay Bosk, and so Zuckuss, with a gun to his back, with Boba Fett kind of staring on, saying hate him, dear me, no. In fact, I admire and respect him, sort of.
And then I don't believe what I'm hearing. This from you, sucker? And then I totally want this to turn into, why, just yesterday you were saying he's a fart sniffing, turn into the fucking Johnny Storm bit from Deadpool and Wolverine. You said you could lick your cinnamon roll or whatever it is that he says.
So we have this shuttle reconnecting with Bosk's ship, again, called the Hound's Tooth, though it's never said in this comic.
No, but it is called that. I know that. It clanks in.
And then Boba Fett talking for the first time to his ship's computer.
Yeah, they've given Slave One this AI computer system, which I don't know if to ever be the case. Once again, it's, as you've pointed out, I've always just seen it as just a ship that has Boba Fett and then a place for him to keep his prisoners. I don't think it was a very complex ship.
And it is complex because like it's been modified and there's like lots of hidden weapons and stuff on it.
I mean,
and
it's got defensive capabilities and stuff because he can kick ass with it, but it's not like this. They're turning it once again enterprise with like computer.
If we want to get into expanded universe stuff, there's a whole backstory about how Jango Fett like stole this ship and it was like a prototype model and he destroyed all the other versions of it that existed so that he would have his own special little ship.
Right. We don't need to get into that.
But we don't need to get... Also, Jango Fett doesn't exist as of the writing of this comic, so...
That is interesting to think about.
Right?
Yeah, there's no Jango Fett at this point.
No, as of this point, this Boba Fett's real name might be Jaster. We'll get into that later.
Ooh.
Yeah. Look, the whole alternate history of Boba Fett that exists, especially in the comics, is fascinating. We'll get into it as we get through more of our coverage.
Yes. Okay, so...
But what's this? Bosk is unloading, or one of Bosk's minions is unloading the shuttle that's been sent over, and it's just full of corpses.
And who's this guy now?
It's just another guy that's over on Bosk's ship. He's there to say, "Oh no.
Oh no!" He didn't say, "Wow."
Well, because Boba Fett's busy saying, "I've got some bad news for you, Bosk."
Yeah, and it's a pile of corpses.
It's a pile of corpses that have been covering up a bomb that goes off and explodes the front of Bosk's ship.
Man, pretty fucking gnarly.
I mean, that's a Boba Fett move.
This for the first time in this comic, he's acting like Boba Fett.
With a baroom.
That's a good space sound and I know, but by Star Wars standards, there is explosion sounds in space, and I think that's pretty good.
Yeah.
All right, so turn the page, and Slave 1 is out, baby.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I have no time to set a more powerful device. That's why I can't kill any of the other named characters.
Yeah. Because they might need you in later books, so I'll just have to leave it at that. Bye.
And we get one final panel of Bosk here going, "Curse you, Boba Fett!
We shall meet again in a later book, depending on the sales of this." And off they go.
And off they go. Let's cut back to everyone's favorite character, Jix.
Yeah! And then and he's having to explain, or I'm sorry, Spiker's actually the one having to explain to Jabba how they let Luke Skywalker get away from them. You would think he could just be like, Jedi?
Well, no one believes Luke is a Jedi at this point, right? Even at Return of the Jedi, Jabba's like, "Oh, okay, sure, Jedi."
That's right. I guess he does sort of have that attitude, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, at this point, everyone's pretty... At least at this point in the Star Wars universe, everyone's pretty certain all the Jedi are dead.
Okay, well, he's a pretty formidable foe, though. They know that.
Do they, though? They just think he's some, like, farm kid. Do they even know that he blew up the Death Star?
Well, there's a good question. We often have wondered in this book about how much people know about what's going on in other parts of the universe, right?
Because unless you're Valance, who has literally seen the movie tape of Star Wars... Famously, then I don't know how much everyone else knows, yeah.
Yeah. Good question. That I don't know. So we'll put a pin in that.
But Jabba is a little mistrusting of Jix still, as he's saying, in English, again, very odd that Jabba never speaks a different language here.
Perfect English.
He speaks the King's English.
Yeah. when he speaks Hut, he's like, "On me boogie," but then he goes, "Well, but when I switch to English, I speak a perfect sort of thing like this. Yes, your leader dead, half your swoop gang gone.
Uni wonky duno solo. Oh.
I only put on the other voice for intimidation. It goes over well with the plebeians and such." Yeah, and so they're all going like, "Hey man, we did our best. That guy came at us though, bro."
Yikes. He came right at us.
If anyone was going to say that, in Star Wars. It's Jix.
Sure. Yeah.
Just like I was telling my main man Darth Vader that
Well, because that's what he says. He says Darth Vader offered the reward, but everybody knows he wants Skywalker alive.
Yeah.
And by everybody, I mean me, because it's written on the fridge.
He told me that, man. Yeah. When I was looking for my frozen pizzas, I distinctly saw. Yeah.
There was a sticky note that said Skywalker alive, and the alive part was underlined 3 times.
Yeah, man. You know he's serious, because Vader is not one to overuse underlines, all right?
No, sir.
Only if he really means business, okay? There were like 5 exclamation points in there, all right?
So, but Jabba is under the impression that, no, Vader wants this kid dead. And we, the readers, know that it is Prince Xizor who sort of set all of this in motion by placing a false trail of information indicating that Darth Vader wants to kill Luke Skywalker. And he's doing that so that when Skywalker dies, Vader is to blame, thus displeasing the Emperor and making Xizor ascendant in the Imperial hierarchy. It's very convoluted.
Needlessly complicated.
And
he's not
explained at all in this comic.
Because like we talked about, he's playing both sides against the middle, but he's also playing like 4 levels of all sides against the middle too.
Yeah, which is sort of the appeal of the character, right? He's supposed to be this master manipulator, and we'll eventually learn that all of it is for naught because it turns out Palpatine, who'd have thunk, is in fact the master manipulator.
No one out manipulates Palpatine, man.
I mean, no, that's the whole point of the character.
That's kind of his main thing.
And it's really interesting, especially considering this is prequel, right? And it is really in the prequels that we get this whole grand manipulation that Palpatine sort of inspires in the Clone Wars.
It is an interesting point. Yeah, we haven't, I mean, at this point, all we've seen of the Emperor is one scene in Empire, which at this point is still not the Palpatine Emperor, as we know him. And then his stuff in Return of the Jedi, where he's full on just a cackling madman at that point, right? You don't really get a sense of the evil genius machinations. I guess a little bit, but it's all in just like, yes, strike him down, you know? It's
but he's a little bit more salacious when it comes to the temptation of Luke, at least at first. It's not until he goes full Force lightning that he becomes evil space wizard.
Yeah, this is true, but I'm saying it's interesting how actually you're right about how kind of dead on they are with how his portrayal going forward will be.
Yeah. So Jix is clearly upset about this. Okay, now this is where this comic like blitzes through events in the novel when we hard cut to space battle that is not explained at all.
I had to read this like 3-4 times to go, okay, now wait a minute. Okay, who is this? Where are we? And it's because you start on a space battle, and then we're going to have to go between these 2 pages, I think, a little bit, because you cut to the space battle, and then I'm like, what the hell's going on? It comes out of nowhere. And then you realize that you're actually looking at the Emperor getting the report about the space battle that we're seeing.
Right. So, what has happened is, I'm just going to explain, like, 4 or 5 chapters of the novel now.
Yeah. You have to. I don't fully understand what's happening here.
In the last issue of the comic, we saw that sequence in which that messenger droid showed up, and Luke and Dash Rendar had to go off to meet with some Bothans because the Bothans had very important information for the rebellion, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the novel, we follow them and they go do that.
Yeah.
And what we learn is, and we got this like very briefly in the comic last issue, where Xizor is like handing off some information to the rebels, being like, hey, there's going to be some super secret good stuff in this transport ship. If you can disable it and steal what's on there, it might be really helpful for the rebellion.
Yeah.
So they do that.
Yeah.
Luke and Dash go to Bothwui, which is like the home world of the Bothans. Bothans are like weird cat people, as is slowly getting established in this era of Star Wars.
It was new to me. I didn't know much about the Bothans. I certainly would not have been able to say they came from Bothwui.
Sure. And, like, it's never mentioned in the movies what a Bothan is, if that is, like, an independent species or a job title. It's never said. They explain that a lot in the expanded universe.
I like the idea of it as a job. I just got promoted to Bothan.
Ooh, Bothan, huh? Did that come with a pay raise?
Well, a little bit, and a corner office. That's all I'm saying.
Very nice.
Nice.
Because the life expectancy is so low. You know that, right?
What? Well, many Bothans have died, and I hear many more are going to. At least 6.
We get Luke and Dash on Bothawui meeting with these Bothans, being like, hey, we're a rebel cell within the Bothan. There's like this whole sprawling network of Bothan intelligence that gets explained to us, and how like certain cells are working for the rebellion, certain cells are like freelance, and certain cells are with the Empire, and none of them trust each other. But this little cell here, Luke gets put in with, and they've got a bunch of Y-Wings and some inexperienced fighters, so Luke has to basically have this Top Gun montage where he's training all of these guys to take down this Imperial transport. I'm trying to really condense this down.
What I like so far, that what I like about this is, and you comics readers, you don't give a shit about this. You want more Boba Fett, right?
And then that leads to this assault on this transport, in which Luke and a bunch of Y-Wings attack the ship, disable it, at which point we also have a level of the video game jammed in here, in which Dash Rendar gets onto this ship, and it's a whole, like, Doom-esque level.
Christ, this guy's all over the place.
I mean, he is the main character of the video game, Sean.
I am aware. Yeah. Everyone's favorite character, Dash Rendar.
Yeah. There's a whole sequence in which Dash has to, like, basically fight his way into the center of the ship and get the Death Star 2 plans. That's what's on this ship.
Okay. Right, because and the Bothans are going to die in this, right?
Some of them.
Many.
I would say 6. I don't know if that counts as many. Well, look, Mon Mothma might be a little over dramatic about this whole scenario.
Luke Skywalker's like, I think it was only like 6. I would love the extended sequence of that where they just get into an argument about the semantics of her saying many. I don't really think that's I don't know. I think that's still quite a bit. I mean, sure, it's a tragedy, but is it really many? I think you're overselling it. You've painted an inaccurate picture in these people's heads.
We lost way more people at Hoth than we did trying to take this information.
Yeah. But the Bothan crews were inexperienced. 6 of them were destroyed. Had it not been for Skywalker and his X-Wing, the freighter might have escaped. Yeah, but by the way, you don't even really see where Luke's X-Wing is in this.
It's down in the bottom left corner.
I guess that's right, because everything else is Y-Wings, right?
Yeah.
Okay. But what's he doing? I don't know. I mean, it's just, you're like, hey, would this space battle have taken... No! More Boba Fett monologuing!
So anyway, yeah, like you say, in the comic, we cut out, and all of this is being reported to the Emperor by Prince Xizor.
Who says, once again, an understatement, if many Bothans over, here's an understatement, he's turned into a dangerous enemy, Emperor. You fucking think?
I mean, of anyone who would know that Luke blew up the Death Star, these two.
Yeah.
And again, in the novel, I have to reiterate, because I haven't mentioned it in a couple episodes, I think, the opening of the book is Xizor overhearing the first conversation about Skywalker between the Emperor and Darth Vader that we hear in Empire Strikes Back, about how if he could be turned, he would make a powerful ally.
Right.
And so Xizor, with that knowledge, again, not given to him in this comic, but presumed he possesses it, knows that Luke Skywalker should be removed so that the Emperor doesn't have a powerful tool.
Right, because he's playing all sides against the middle. This guy, man.
Again, comic, not explaining any of this.
No, he's a very strange character in the comic, because he really comes and goes from the comic. For being the main villain of the book, he sort of comes in and out of the comic.
Oh, if you think he's scarce in the comic, you should see the video game. He's barely in that thing.
It's interesting because, once again, like a lot of the merchant, and because he's from the book, but like I remember that was the big thing: is you got to get your Xizor toy because he's the new big bad.
I mean, and he is, but he's more of a Machiavellian bad guy. He's not the physical threat that Darth Vader is, or the evil magic threat that the Emperor is. He's just scheming. He's a schemer. He's got some schemes.
Yeah. And so it's like, I like that it's the other, because the Emperor's like, hey man, weren't you the one who told me to transport them this way? And now and he's like, yeah, this will still work out though. Listen to me on this. This is going to be.
That's when Xizor at the bottom of this page says, once the rebels find out exactly what it is that they have been given, and they trust me completely, then I can lure them into a situation where you get to destroy all of them, Mr. Emperor Man.
But this is where I'm a little bit like, I'm not, and maybe it's just because Xizor is a brand new character, but it is sort of like, I don't know that I like him getting one up on the Emperor like this. Like, it's pretty obvious he's fucking with him.
Again, Xizor's put himself into a position where no matter who wins, he wins.
I guess that's true, but it just sort of feels like when he goes like, hey man, that's actually the great thing, because that, I would think Palpatine would be like, maybe, but that seems, I don't know.
Strap in for the end of this story, because...
Yeah, I don't remember where this goes. I that makes sense. If that goes that way, then I'll be happy.
But yeah, for now, Xizor... he's playing all sides.
Everything's coming up, Xizor.
Let's cut to Luke and some Bothans.
All right. Here
Again,
they are.
Blazing through way more of this story. What happened to Dash Rendar? Wasn't he with Luke? Don't worry about it.
Yeah, because they talk about, okay, we have the plans. Now we need to decrypt them.
Right. They don't know what they have yet.
They've stolen something. They actually don't even know the Death Star 2 plans, right?
Exactly.
Right. So they're just going, we've got information. We need to figure out what it is.
And it's going to take them some time, so we got to lay low at this safe house. But what's this? Uh-oh. Lizard people bounty hunters that are distinct from Bosk.
Straight up just dinosaur guy with this tail and stuff, right? Like,
I mean, I love a good dinosaur guy.
Yeah, but he bazangs back. They're going with bazang as the deflection sound.
Sure. And Luke saying, I thought this was a safe house.
A very not Luke Skywalker line.
Not a danger house.
You know, the opposite of safe, right? Right? Anyone? Oh, they're all dead.
They're all dead.
But anyway, no time for that, though.
Let's cut away from that. All right.
I love the idea of a battle sequence starting and then just going like, we don't have enough time.
Speaking of no time, I'm going to have to condense like 4 more chapters of the book right now because that just happened in between these 2 pages.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Yeah, they are. They took too much time early on. Now they're like, oh, shit, we only have a few issues left. Oh, God, okay.
And what doesn't help is that we've kind of lost track of Leia over the course of the last 2 issues.
Oh, Leia's been completely absent, yeah.
And she's one of the main characters of the book, obviously.
Yeah, she's pretty important.
So, Leia, meanwhile, has been, like, trying to track down Black Sun, right? Because in the book, her motivations are slightly different than in the comic. In the comic, she leaps straight to, well, Black Sun's probably behind people trying to kill Luke. In the novel, she's more like, okay, who's trying to work up this assassination against Luke? The only people I know of that have an expansive enough spy network and are in the, like, belly of the underworld are Black Sun. Let's go to Rhodia, where I know, or where Lando knows of a contact to Black Sun. Again, we totally lose Lando in all of this as well.
Yeah. Oh, there is, I mean, there's a lot of Boba Fett, but he's still not, this book has no protagonist, this comic, at all.
So, there's a whole extended sequence on Rhodia, which is like Greedo's homeworld, where we meet Greedo's uncle. I'm totally not joking.
And he shows up and says, hello, I'm Greedo's uncle.
Well, we get this, like, thing where Lando's like, Greedo's uncle could probably get us in with Black Sun, but I don't know how he's going to feel after Han shot Greedo, so we'll see how this goes.
Hey, his nephew shot first, so he started it, you know.
But then it turns out that Greedo was kind of like the fuck up of the family, and the uncle's just like, don't worry about it.
We knew he was going to say McClunky to somebody sooner or later and start some trouble.
So then we get like several sections where this is all taking place at a casino that Greedo's uncle owns.
God, how unnecessary.
But what it does establish is Leia, like, really digging into the criminal underworld of it all and starting to put together some pieces, which is when she meets Guri, the assistant to Prince Xizor. At the same time, we also get chapters from Jizor's point of view, in which he finds out that Leia is digging into all of this, and it's like, oh, Princess Leia, you say? I'm a sex pest. We should probably go abduct her.
Yeah, I'm going to assault her. So good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm going to send my hot robot lady to go collect her. Guri and Leia meet, at which point there is this convoluted plot in which Leia sets up like some scanners to figure out what Guri is because Chewbacca is super weirded out by her. So there's this whole sequence in which Leia figures out that she's not human without letting on the fact that she figures that out. I say all of this because of Leia's thought bubble on the bottom panel here.
I was pretty confused by all of this. I've just accepted my confusion reading this comic. I've started to read this now just going like, I'm not going to understand a lot of what's going on. And that's okay.
Because Leia's thought bubble here says, besides, Guri may look human, but she's a replica droid. If she'd wanted to harm us, she could have done it any time.
And I knew that going in. We had already discussed in previous episodes that she was a android of some kind. And so I just was sort of like, okay, so that didn't like shock me, but this sudden cut to Guri and Leia even being together and then her going, you got to put on this outfit, and then Chewie in his fucking cable cosplay.
Because, yeah, when Leia meets with Guri, eventually Guri is like, okay, we can get you all the information you need. You just have to come meet the leader of Black Sun, Prince Jizor. You have to meet him on Coruscant. What's this? You're the most wanted person in the galaxy, Princess Leia? Well, better get you a disguise.
Which is so funny to me that the disguise of Boushh is... I just assumed that was disguise made for the Jabba. No, she already had that. That was for a different mission, and I was like, oh, this is great. I can use it again.
That was something she had in the back of the closet. It was just like, I need to put together an outfit to go infiltrate Jabba's palace. What do I have? What do I have? What do I have?
Silly to me. But sure, like, whatever.
That's how I put together Halloween costumes when I'm invited to a party at the last minute.
What have I got? What have I got? Yeah.
I got a wizard's beard and a bathrobe. I guess I could be the dude, but a wizard. Okay.
Wizard dude.
The wizard abides. All right, we got there.
All right, there it is. Yeah, and then Chewie's real upset because they've dyed his fur, although I don't really see that in the art.
That's because it's not there in the art.
Yeah, that really threw me. Stop complaining, Chewie. The dye will wash out in a couple of weeks. You'll be back to normal. I'm like, he just looks like Chewie, but they put a bunch of, like, mechanical shit on him.
So, I've seen some people online, and they're not 100% wrong. The identity that Chewie assumes here, Snuva, is a Wookiee bounty hunter that is introduced in this story, but then like shows up in other ancillary stuff down the road.
Yeah,
and
it's that pretty look does seem familiar to me.
It's pretty clear that character is sort of the template for what we'll get in Black Chrysanthemum down the road in the Marvel era.
Who rules? I love Black.
Who rules? Yeah, but the idea is that he's like darkened up his fur and some of the other Snuva stuff, if you will.
Think that they just were once again rushing this, and they were like, "Oh, we didn't read it and just colored Chewie normally." Fuck it.
Yeah, and a lot of times in comics like this, the dialogue bubbles are one of the last things added to the book itself.
This is
true. It can sort of bend over backwards at times to justify some of the art that's there. What I think happened here is that the coloring was one of the last things added, and the colorer did not read any of the dialogue.
And they were just like, we just got to ship it. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is not, I mean, I said, I talked about the game. The comic definitely comes off as probably the last priority on the list of this stuff, right? Like,
I got to assume.
Write that comic. Oh, shit. Yeah.
The tier list here is like novel, toys, video game is somewhere in the top 3.
Yeah.
And then after that, we've got a soundtrack that was composed.
Yeah, the soundtrack actually is pretty good, though.
Yeah, it is.
But that almost can be done in isolation, right? Like, that's nobody's monitoring that to a certain extent.
Right, but the soundtrack was also not it wasn't made exclusively for the video game, but the video game implemented it in ways.
The soundtrack is made for the book, which is really interesting. You know, it's like right, it's a novel with a soundtrack, which I still think is kind of an interesting idea.
But anyway, so yes, all of that is to say, Leia and Chewie are in disguise now. They're being led by this robot woman, Guri, into the belly of the beast, Black Sun's center of organization on Coruscant.
Before we go back to Luke Skywalker.
And what's this? We're back to Luke Skywalker.
Zang, vrap, boop, bow, boop, 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 boop.
And he's trying to...
There's another Bothan going down, so that's 7.
Okay. And then Koth here, you know, that guy whose name we know... Koth?
And Luke being like, no, not Koth! Anyone but Koth!
I think his name is said once in the last issue, and then in this issue it's said like 4 times as a tragic scream.
This hurts worse than Han Solo.
Not Koth.
My best friend. Why?
Yeah. So
nice try, book.
So Koth, that Bothan we all love so much, goes down.
But he's happy to go down for it, right? Like, it's like, this is the way he acts is like, Luke, it's okay. This sacrifice was worth it.
And in the book, it is a little bit more impactful in the novel.
Yeah, I would think
we had chapters to get to know Koth a little bit.
Yeah. Here's the thing about this. Really interesting idea, this multimedia thing. But clearly the book was the thing that they put the effort into, and I think is the best thing that came out of this, right?
And if you're going to be telling a more expanded story, right, why even bother trying to just, like, really force moments from the novel into this comic? Why not just stick with Boba Fett the whole time?
Just make it the Boba Fett spinoff. Here's what Boba Fett was doing during the events of the book. Like, it's a weird thing because it's acting both like you have read the book and that you haven't read the book. It's really weird.
Yeah.
It's a very strange book. It's a very strange comic.
These dinosaur fellas are surrounding Luke now. They've got him at gunpoint and they're saying, "Hey, look, kid, we like Jedi, honestly, but this is just business."
This is another one, too, where I'm like, you telling me Luke can't fuck up these guys? Okay.
Well, there's like 5 of them. Luke can't fight 5 guys.
Right. Maybe I think Luke's too cool. I don't know.
Also, Luke here is buying time.
Definitely fight 5 guys, by the way. No.
Sure. No, but he's also buying time because he's letting the other Bothans get away with the computer stuff.
Yes, right. Yeah. Because 7 of them have already gone down. So
and that's many.
Yeah, that's many. Yeah, I do like the idea about this, like, hey, man, I don't want it getting out there that we don't like Jedi, all right? That's not about this.
What we do isn't about personal grudges, all right?
Yeah. We just want you as I take your lightsaber, and I'm definitely keeping that.
So then it's Leia and Chewbacca in disguise.
It's starting to leap back and forth.
Yeah, and we're really plowing through the book now because there's this whole sequence in which Chewbacca and Leia get onto the planet that we're just skipping straight over.
Well, and they're like captured.
Kind of, no. They're not captured, they're just being escorted very firmly.
Okay, I would say tomato, but okay.
But the premise here is that no, we're not taking you prisoner, even though they kind of are. We're leading you to Prince Xizor, and the security is very tight.
Yeah, all right, sure, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure those extra pat-downs were needed, but okay.
Well, speaking of pat-downs, here comes Xizor with all of his stink.
King of the pat-down. Princess Leia Organa and Chewbacca. Full page, just all up in her personal space.
Yeah. Okay. So here's something that they go about in the novel that we have not touched on at all in the comics, and it's for the best, because it's one of the worst parts about this character.
Rapey.
Super rapey.
Yep.
And biologically super rapey, because they go into this whole thing where he has pheromones that lets him, like, not control people per se, but definitely, like, people assume the best about him or become more attracted to him if they get a good sniff of Xizor.
I don't like it.
Yeah,
It
it's
makes
gross.
me feel uncomfortable, and
Yeah.
and it's totally not needed.
And they do something similar in like certain episodes of Star Trek with like Betazoid, or not Betazoids, Orions
Yes,
in the original series.
but
There was like
they're not not to this extent, but yes, a
No.
little bit. Right? Yeah.
like there's that episode where like the Orion women make Kirk go mad, right?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, there is stuff like that. But it's more about activating an emotion as opposed to a control. It's more about like, once again, it's like I smell the pheromone or whatever, and then everything's heightened.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas
here
we're not at Purple Man levels, but we're on our way there.
yeah, because Jizor's getting real close. He's got a hand on her shoulder, and he's just like, well, welcome to my humble abode. And we get these weird smoke lines around him that I think are supposed to represent his pheromone stink.
It's a weird choice too.
Yeah, I get what they're going for, but because the comic doesn't actually explain what's happening, it just makes it look like they're in a pretty stinky place.
Yeah. We started about the smell. We had a sewage leak. It's a whole thing. Trying to get a plumber out here.
And Jizor is just like, oh, you must be so tired. Why don't you go to the boudoir and change? He doesn't use the word boudoir, but he's the kind of guy who would.
Well, also, this is very Bond villain. The idea about like, oh, I have clothing for you.
Yeah, stuff that already fits. Don't you worry.
Yeah. So yeah, and then Leia's got a thought bubble of, what's the matter with me? Why do I feel so attracted to him?
Blech.
Yeah, it's gross.
It's gross.
And I was like, oh god, I do remember this from the book, and I was not happy to see this back here.
Yeah, it's not great. And you'd think Chewie, with like his heightened senses, would be able to tell that something's wrong.
Chewie is just over there.
Chewie's here. He goes, ner.
Yeah. So anyway, back to Luke Skywalker, captured by dinosaur guys.
I am Skatul, and we are bounty hunters, if that wasn't clear by now.
Yeah. Oh, did I not say that earlier? We're totally bounty hunters. Pretty cool job. Anyway, but we do like Jedi, so and Luke wants to know who's offering the reward. He's like, da, we don't do that.
But he does learn that there are apparently 2 rewards up for Luke Skywalker. One for dead, one for alive.
Yep. Somebody else wants you dead, and just be happy that at least right now, alive is winning.
Yeah, the dead price is slightly lower than the alive price at the moment.
So that's good, but that may change.
I do like the exchange here when Skatul says, like I said, it's not personal, just business. And Luke responds, well, you'll excuse me if I take it personally.
Not bad.
Yeah.
That's fine banter.
That's from the book.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We did talk about the pheromone thing in the first episode, that the publisher wanted Leia to sleep with Prince Jizor, and Steve Perry was like, you can't make me do that because that's going to come back at me. Yeah, they're not going to say the publisher. They're going to say that guy who wrote that and made her cheat on Han Solo, kind of, is not going to go well for me.
You don't want to be the guy who writes Leia getting date raped.
Right, yeah, and it's just like, and it's mine, it says by Steve Perry in the book.
Mm-hmm.
So who's that going to, and I respect that.
Absolutely.
No one would have liked that. That would have been edgy for edgy's sake, right?
Just so classically late 90s, just edgelord bullshit. Yeah.
Yep. Total bullshit. Exactly right. All right. Now we'll cut over to, because this comic's all over the place, back to the Emperor Invader. And he's sending him to Kotless,
which is where the lizard guys are taking Luke.
Wasn't the guy named Koth?
Yes, don't worry about it.
Oh, Jesus, that's lazy.
Steve Perry likes reusing certain names.
That's not great.
No, it's not.
And Vader's like, can't I send someone else?
And this is where we get into some Palpatine manipulation, because Palpatine is saying, look, we need whoever's looking for Luke Skywalker to take us seriously. And if I send anybody else, they're going to be like, oh, they don't really care. If I send you, everyone's going to know that we want this Luke Skywalker kid.
Yes.
And he thinks that Luke still has the plans for Death Star 2.
And I'm not crazy about a Vader thought bubble ever.
Yeah, Vader interiority is always tricky, right?
Yeah, we've talked about it before. He's one of the few characters where you really have to be super careful.
And like the more recent Star Wars comics with Vader have handled it okay.
And he's also just like, oh God, this is probably about that Xizor guy.
Yeah, and there's a little bit of this in the novel as well. We get some Vader POV chapters where he's just like, oh, fuck Xizor. Fuck him right in the face.
So, yeah, anyway, back to Luke in his cell, and he's trying to focus with the Force.
And he starts using the old Jedi mind trick.
I like this. This is good.
And we see a little bit of like his struggle here. He's like trying to tell the guard, open the door, let me out. And there's a bit of a moment where the guard is like, wait, hold on. What? No.
I like this because Luke is focusing, going, open the door. And the guy's like, I'm opening the door. And then Luke's like, oh, God, it's working. But that broke he got ahead of himself. It's a good use of a thought bubble, number one, which, like I said, I'm rare to say that. But two, I like that it shows Luke powerful, but still not fully honed.
Mm-hmm. Because especially by the time we get to Jedi, when he's just walking up to Bib Fortuna and saying, like, you will take me to Jabba now.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is we're still a little ways from that, where he comes in and he's just a full-on badass at the beginning of Jedi. Also, I think, how formidable is Bib Fortuna?
Well, considering his arc is survive Jabba getting killed and then gets killed by Boba Fett, not great.
Which was pretty rad. I was pretty excited when Boba Fett just walked up and iced him. But here it does. He does it.
Yeah, on this next page, we get him to have the guard open the door, and then he says, you're very tired. Come in and lie down on the cot and take a nap.
I want to see that guy explain that to his superiors later.
I was just so sleepy.
Yeah. I just ate a big turkey for lunch. I'm just saying, it was a lot.
We're lizard people. We've got this thing called torpor. Occasionally, you just gotta shut down, man.
Yeah, man. Come on. You get it. Oh, you don't? Uh-oh.
So Luke grabs his gun, and he escapes, and what's this? Oh, end of the issue.
End of the issue. Yeah, another abrupt. These Dark Horse comics, man, they didn't play around. They just stopped.
Yeah.
I did not need the thought balloon of, I'm definitely getting better. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, we saw that through action.
Yeah, God. I expect the 90s to do a little bit better, but no, still a little overwritten, man.
I mean, that's the thing with comics in general, right? You'd expect there to be this progression of quality over time, and the God's honest truth is, it doesn't matter what era you're reading, there is a quality gap between good and bad writers.
100%. That's the thing about it, is you're like, because I'll often go like, oh, I really start liking comics writing like in the late 70s. You're like, oh, I like Five Guys in the late, so right? Like, you're like, oh yeah, some of them, but then a lot of it is still, you go like, oh God, you still read some of the, I was just talking with a friend of the show, Brendan Jones, about, we were both reading through the epic collections of Moon Knight, but occasionally you get like, what's great about those epic collections is they'll put in like, when Moon Knight was in the Defenders. And so while the Moon Knight comic of the 70s is pretty awesome, when he goes into Defenders, you're like, Jesus, this is terrible.
I mean, honestly, you even get that in especially Big Two comics today. You'll have certain books that are like really well written, really well honed, and other books that just feel a little all over the place, a little messy, and that's just always going to be the case. The style of the writing might change from era to era. Like obviously, back when we're talking about the books in the 80s, you have people trying to ape Claremont and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm talking about, I guess, is I'm surprised at how overwritten this is in places. Because that I think of as just as a trend has gone out of style in the 90s.
You'd think that, but I would challenge you to go read, like, I don't know, issues of go read the Avengers from the 90s, an era nobody talks about.
Beloved 90s Avengers. No, you're absolutely right about that. That's true. And it's just the other thing is this book has a lot of heavy lifting to do, and some of that is we're talking about it put on itself unnecessarily.
Yeah, exactly. And whether or not that was a publisher mandate or whether or not that was just poor planning during the kind of mapping of what this sprawling story would be, again, from the comics angle, it feels like the easier, more clear move would have been just stop trying to either do a direct adaptation of the novel or don't do it halfway.
Right. Yeah. Anyway, I guess there's more.
There's 2 more issues of Shadows of the Empire. We're almost there, John. Again, we're going to just be blitzing through chunks of the novel here from here on out.
A race to the finish, folks.
Mm-hmm. But you'd best bet we're going to get some more ham-handed Boba Fett before we get to the end of this.
You better be talking to an unconscious Han Solo. That's all I know. Is he even Boba Fett if he's not?
After this, yes.
Yeah. So, check that out. Also, if you want more from us here at the Punch Up Entertainment Network, you'd head over to our Patreon page, patreon.podbean.com/punchup. Once again, that's patreon.podbean.com/punchup. There you get cool exclusive bonus content from this and all the shows on the Punch Up Entertainment Network.
Speaking of the Punch Up Entertainment Network, you can go find all of those shows that John just mentioned over on our YouTube page. It's youtube.com/@punchupentertainment. One of the best ways of watching this show, I know that for damn sure, because you can read along with us, see the comic displayed as well as our beautiful faces while we're agog at just how strange some of the choices are in this book.
Agog is the right word for sure.
As you're there, you can also check out every other one of our shows here on the network. We've got Campbell and Jones Meet the Monsters with the aforementioned Brendan Jones. We've got the IP Squad, where, at least for now, I don't know, due to podcast time travel, we may have caught up to the end of the Pulp Heroes.
Yeah. We may be doing Aliens and Predators at this point.
Oh, in which case I'm very excited. But you can also find Punch Up Plays, where Elliot Lewis and I are in the midst of galactic diplomacy over in the Mass Effect franchise. I think there might be something wrong with that there Saren fella. He might be up to no good. I don't know. We'll see.
I still like him.
A Saren apologist, I see.
Look, he has some points.
I beg you, John, to go look up what that character did in that game and then come back to me with that statement.
I have played that game, but it's been a long time and I can't remember. I do remember. But
while you're there, please like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell for notifications whenever a new show drops on the network, which is basically every day.
Pretty much every day now, yeah.
So for your best second screen experience, go over to the Punch Up Entertainment Network over on YouTube. While you're there, let me know in the comments below. Do you really remember what happened in Shadows of the Empire? Or is it just the idea of Shadows of the Empire that you latch on to? What is it about this story that makes you nostalgic? Or does the story itself still inspire joy? Because, John and I, we're more than halfway through this now. We're flagging a little bit on this story. Not gonna lie.
Joy is what I'm experiencing by any stretch of the imagination.
But there's still that nostalgia factor to examine. So let me know what your thoughts are on the subject in the comments below.
All right.
But I think that's going to do it for us here this week. As always, I have been Mike Ergoni.
I'm John Campbell.
And remember, may the panel be with you.